ain't taking notes from nobody.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at Celtics Talk Weekly. I just gotta check. Is my audio good?
Yeah. I couldn't hear you at first, but we're good now.
1 second. I gotta make sure everything is good. All right. So the Boston Celtics. Wow. Wow is all I can say. The Boston Celtics come back down 17 against the Brooklyn Nets in Game 2 of the 2020 NBA playoffs, first round. Celtics win 114-107. Grant Williams is your player spotlight tonight, Seamus. 17 points, 6 rebounds, a perfect 4 for 4 shooting. The Celtics defense continues to show why they are the best in the NBA. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown kind of struggled tonight, but the Celtics still found a way to win this game. It's kind of been the theme, right? These first 2 games, Celtics not necessarily playing basketball, but they're finding ways to win the game. Seamus, what was the key tonight for the Celtics win in Boston?
Well, first of all, holy shit, we're back. We're back to playoff basketball. We're back to actual playoff basketball. The other night, I went back and watched some highlights from last year's playoff series, right? And the crowd, we had a 50% capacity crowd for Game 3, and then we had the full crowd for Game 4, but it never really got to the level in which we've seen these last 2 games, which tonight, shout out to the crowd. The Garden crowd was absolutely electric down the stretch, and it had everything to do with the Celtics pulling out this game. And I even have right here, I have the practice shirt from 2017. I have the rally shirt on right now. Put it on when we were down 17. We come back in the game in the fourth quarter.
I'm having trouble.
The playoffs.
I'm having trouble hearing you right now. I think it's on my end. Sorry. Keep talking.
In the playoffs, to perform late in game, it might be me. I don't know. I might be lagging here. But to perform late in game, that is the number one key championship teams have to hold with them the entire championship run. You have to close out ball games because in the playoffs, you're facing the highest level of competition in the entire league. In this playoff series, specifically in the first round, this feels like a conference finals match. It feels like a semifinals match with the atmosphere and the crowd and the talent on the floor. And so in the playoffs, teams are not going to roll over like they do in the regular season. They're not going to roll over on a Tuesday night and go, okay, well, yeah, we're down 10 going into the fourth quarter. We'll just keep our foot off the gas. No, these teams are coming at each other 24/7 or the whole time they're out there on the court. And the fact the Celtics were able to close out that game in the fashion they did, in a dominant fashion down the stretch. I'm riding solo right now. The way they finished that game down the stretch was absolutely invigorating, and hopefully it shows a lot about this team and where they can go moving forward, because we've seen the talent out of the squad the whole season, or I shouldn't say the whole season, half of the season, right? And yet in the playoffs, we question, will this team be able to get it done? Will they be able to get it done down the stretch? Will they not revert back to themselves back in December and November when they just couldn't figure things out? And from these 2 games against the Brooklyn Nets, we would have lost these games 3 months ago. The Celtics, they were terrible in fourth quarters back in January. They were terrible in fourth quarters back in December and November and October. Yet now we come into the playoffs, and this is 2 straight fourth quarters where we essentially last game, we had a lead, lost it, and then we overcame that adversity, kept pushing out there, and eventually won the game on a last-second play. Tonight, we were down for most of the game, and in the fourth quarter, we had to dig ourselves out of a little bit of a hole. But once that happened, the team just piled on after that, and it went all the way to the finish line. And it's just amazing to see. It's amazing to see where we're at and what we're seeing on our TV screens. And even you were at the Garden for Game 1. Ian was at the Garden tonight. It's just amazing what's happening with this team right now and the heights that they're reaching, because earlier in the season, we all knew, is this team a contending team? Is this team even going to make the playoffs? Are they going to make the play-in? Who even knows? And yet now they're the 2 seed in the East. They have a 2-0 series lead on the Brooklyn Nets in the first round, and they've dominated down the stretch in both games. I can't say enough about the squad. There's so many more things to touch on tonight, but down the stretch, it's just absolutely amazing what we're seeing.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, you hit it almost to a pinpoint. I couldn't hear everything. I got my audio finally back. We're working though, but you know what's my favorite part about this win, Seamus, is I sat there and I texted you, I texted Ian, I texted Justin, and I said, I have to sit here, I have to listen to these mainstream ESPN, Stephen A. Smith, whoever it might be, JJ Redick. I have to sit there and hear them say, Katie's not going to shoot this bad. Katie's going to get 40. Kyrie, these two, they're dynamic. They're generational, and they are. I'm not discrediting anything Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant has done, but the Boston Celtics, people were discrediting what they did defensively to create problems for Kevin Durant in game one. They said he wouldn't do it again. I didn't think he'd shoot this poor again, right? But guess what? Kevin Durant came out 4 of 17. Kyrie Irving 4 of 13. Let's take a look at the other Brooklyn Nets role players. 23 from Bruce Brown, 16 from Seth Curry, 18 from Goran Dragic. They should be winning games by 40 if that's the outcome of your role players. The Boston Celtics have a scheme down pat. The Celtics, 19 points from Jason Tatum, 22 points from Jaylen Brown. They weren't offensively. They didn't have things going. Brown more so in the fourth quarter, and the same with Tatum.
Yeah.
However, from a scoring aspect, they couldn't really get much going. Brown, phenomenal defense. Jason Tatum had to recognize that he couldn't hit shots and started to play make. He had 10 assists. Grant Williams did his thing off the bench, 17 points. He had a +9, ±. Peyton Pritchard, he had 10 points, +15, ±. The Boston Celtics are just finding ways to win basketball games. This is now the second game when, in reality, the Celtics should have lost this game. It kind of felt like a game back in December, Seamus. First quarter's rough. They're kind of, they're doing well in the second quarter. And you're thinking, oh, God, well, here we go. They're going to put it at 5. It's going to go back to 11, right? You kind of got some PTSD rolling. But that's not who this new Celtics squad is. The Celtics have been doubted in this series. The Celtics have been portrayed as the Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have been portrayed as a lesser to Kevin Durant in Kyrie Irving. But this game, to me, had stamped it. They are equals. Kevin Durant and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are equals to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and they are proving it this series. The Celtics, huge lead, right? 2-0. It's very big. However, Seamus, what do we got to kind of, we're going to their place. We got 2 games at their place. Ben Simmons might come back, whether it's game 4 or 5 or 3. I'm not too worried about that. We got nothing to worry about until he comes onto the court and proves it. But how does this game affect the Celtics moving forward?
Well, they can't be complicit, right? They can't be complicit moving forward. This series is nowhere near over, although we're up 2-0. The Celtics, they're 40-1 all time when they take a 2-0 series lead. And that one loss in a series was the 2018 Eastern Conference Finals with this same core. So the perfect record, or not the perfect record anymore, but the record in that sense, this series is not over by any means. We see it a lot in the NBA where we're going to see it in the next coming week where a team will drop games 1 and 2 on the road and then immediately respond at home. They'll respond at home because it only takes one game, right? Game 3, they come in. Say Brooklyn grabs game 3 at home. All of a sudden, it's game 4, basically for their lives, right? And KD and Kyrie at home, that could get sticky. So the Celtics cannot stay complicit right now. They can't be satisfied with these 2 wins. They feel great, I'm sure, about these 2 wins at home, undoubtedly. But moving forward, they have to just keep on pushing. They have to keep going, moving forward. But these 2 games at home, both of these games felt like the Nets had a chance to just steal it right under the Celtics' nose. Because in game 1, Celtics had a 15-point lead, blew it in the fourth. They could have easily rolled over. The Nets, they went up by 5 at one point late in the game. Kyrie hit multiple daggers in that game, and the Celtics just kept overcoming that stretch there and then eventually won the game on the last play. Tonight, they could have easily rolled over again. 17-point deficit in the first half. Most of the second half, the Nets had the lead. And then finally in the fourth quarter, the team broke through and took over the game down the stretch and eventually, really walked away with it in the last final seconds there. It wasn't as stressful as game 1. But, the Celtics doing that in these 2 games where in game 1, they steal it at the last second. In game 2, they overcome this just myriad of role players bashing the Celtics tonight. We have Bruce Brown, Seth Curry, Goran Dragic, all of them go off. KD has another bad game. After game one, he had another bad game. Kyrie has a bad game yet again, and it felt like the Nets had a huge opportunity to grab at least one of these two games, and yet we're heading to Brooklyn with Boston up 2-0, and that's typically a sign of a pretty good basketball team when you can pull out games that you seemingly shouldn't be able to win.
Most definitely. Now, we welcome in Justin. Justin, how we feeling, right? We're up 2-0. Seamus and I have touched on it. A game down 17. It felt like, here come the Nets, some ticky-tack calls on both ends. I'm not, here to complain about refs, although there were some questionable calls. But, it kind of felt like we're in this never-ending loop of, down 5, down 15, down 7, down 15. How does tonight's win feel?
Feels really good. I also am going to mention it right off the bat. We might not be up 2-0 without Al Horford on this team. So again, I know I give Al Horford maybe a little bit too many flowers here on this show, but he deserves it. I mean, Grant Williams stepped up big. Peyton Pritchard to start the fourth quarter. Actually, the first 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, Pritchard actually had a shaky start, but he was able to kind of bring himself back down to earth. And I can't take a potential 6 to 7 game series of this, like this just constant anxiety and I know we win, so we can't complain too much, but like I can't stand this. But it shows how far this team has come, and it shows how this team has matured in both games. I still can't even process game one win. So I doubt I'm going to be, I still think I'm going to need a couple days to process this. I think it was a 69-45 turnaround in that second half. I don't know if you guys mentioned that, but that is unreal. This is the first time Kevin Durant has attempted 10 or more shots in the second half, and he has hit 0. Goose eggs, nothing. He didn't hit anything. Kyrie Irving didn't have a great game either. Give credit to the Celtic defense. They were just swarming. I've never, ever, and I can honestly, I'm a Kevin Durant fan. I have never seen Kevin Durant struggle the way he struggled tonight against the Boston Celtics, and that was all thanks to the Celtics swarming defense. I mean, every time he got the ball, he was swarmed, and it either turned out to be a foul because Celtics might have been a little bit too aggressive on some plays, or it was a turnover or a missed shot. So I have nothing to complain about after tonight.
Most definitely. And just real quick here, Seamus, something that speaks to me is that neither of these games were by any means the best brand of basketball the Celtics can play. By any means. I don't think this is anywhere close to as good we can be. I think Brooklyn presents a really tough defensive matchup where you got to be consistently, your head's got to be on a swivel, and you can't really fall asleep, and if you do, they'll torch you. So I think on a defensive aspect, we've handled Kevin Durant phenomenally. Offensively, we haven't seen Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum really get going yet. Obviously, it's the playoffs. It's a different type of basketball. It's a more of a buckets are harder to come by, but I need to give the flowers to the Celtics team, because these are two games where we could easily find ourselves down 0-2, and we are up 2-0. Obviously, home court plays a huge factor into that. We got to go in their place, and I think we got to play a much better brand of basketball in Brooklyn if we want to steal. Like, right? What did I say, guys? Name of the game here: take care of home court, steal one on the road, and you're coming back for Game 5 to close the deal.
Correct.
That's the name of the game. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kevin Durant and him struggling this entire game, and really this entire series so far. Of course, it's only 2 games, but this series, the Celtics are just making Kevin Durant feel them every single possession. They're being super physical with them out there. The game plan clearly coming in was hit Kevin Durant anytime you want, because even though he went to the free throw line 16 times tonight or 17 times, somewhere around that number. He is just not getting into a rhythm in his shooting. He's not getting his open shots. He's not even his that crossover move where he pulls up from mid-range or top of the key. he's being swarmed by 2 defenders almost every single time, and he's not getting any open looks. And there was even a couple plays out there that resulted in fouls where guys just straight up come running down the court. It's in transition. There's a play where Brown just straight up ran in to Kevin Durant, and everyone, of course, it was a foul. But I went, that was a really good play.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown just trucked Kevin Durant. Like, how do you think he feels after that? Of course, it's nothing dirty, but the fact that Kevin Durant is just feeling these guys physically 24/7 while he's on the offensive end of the floor, it's just taking a toll clearly on his game just a little bit. And I would expect later on in this series, the Nets make more adjustments to get him better shots and more open shots. And they even alluded to it on the broadcast down the stretch. It didn't make any sense why Kyrie wasn't involved down the stretch, considering how physical we were being with Kevin Durant and how well we were defending him. Didn't really make any sense why Kyrie kind of took a back seat there. You would expect the ball to be in his hands a little bit more in that situation. So I'd expect the Nets to adjust moving forward, but both of these games, the Nets going back to Brooklyn, they have an opportunity, of course, to win both games at home and come back here to Boston 2-2. But after these first 2 games, they have to be a little bit demoralized from how both of them ended. You had a 17-point lead. You had a 5-point lead in game 1 after being down 15. Should have been able to close out both games, and both times the Celtics simply imposed their will down the stretch and just kept fighting, kept going, kept pushing, especially on the offensive end, going to the floor, going to the basket, being aggressive on the floor. That is what's going to win the Celtics this series. And of course, too, the Celtics, we talked about this earlier, they have to limit the role guys in this series. If they limit the role guys, this could be over in 5 potentially if you go and win a game in Brooklyn. Now the goal should be to win a game in Brooklyn and come back and finish it in 5 on the home floor, because it's a possibility at this point. If Seth Curry, Bruce Brown, and Goran Dragic don't go off tonight, KD and Kyrie are completely compromised. That's a blowout win. But, of course, we see the results at hand in the Celtics. They have to keep going in the series. They have to keep at this game plan and adjust.
Yeah, most definitely. And something I noticed that I want to kind of know your guys' opinion on is, I mentioned, earlier how Tatum and Brown really just didn't have it going offensively, but they made the plays down the stretch in the fourth quarter. And that's what really, I think, shows the growth to me is that, something I said coming into this year was that, when your shot's not falling, you got to make an impact some other way, in some other way, shape, or form. You can't just be this offensive juggernaut that, we saw Tatum and Brown were last year and even earlier on in this year. This game, we saw Tatum struggle all game shooting. Brown, he struggled all game. He finished with 22, which isn't, which gets the job done, but he struggled offensively. But Jason Tatum, 10 assists. Jaylen Brown, 3 steals, and did his thing defensively on Kevin Durant and when he switched on to Kyrie Irving. And the thing that speaks to me about the most growth when their backs were against the wall, when the Celtics were making a run, and those role players came looking for your answer. Right. Brown and Tatum responded. They hit the big shots. They took care of business down the stretch in both games. I think it's huge that these guys, even if they are shooting poor, even if Jason Tatum is shooting 31% from the floor, he is capable of making the right play, such as that big time 3 he hit to, kind of seal the deal, or whether it's that cut, that, backdoor to lay it in for the game. And I really do think that shows you the true growth in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
These guys own a lot of tremendous trust for each other, not only respect, but trust. We saw it in game 1, obviously, with that last play. We saw it tonight here. The ball found Peyton Pritchard many times in the fourth quarter, and Peyton Pritchard prevailed. I don't know if you guys caught it, but the Nets had taken a timeout. It was after Pritchard had this rainbow layup shot that hit the top of the backboard and it went in, and all the players and kind of a couple assistant coaches all huddled with Pritchard and kind of put all their heads together. And I'm imagining, they were saying something along the lines of obviously good job and stuff, but these guys really trust each other. These guys really invest a lot of effort into each other, and it shows on the court. Seamus mentioned how Brooklyn should be totally demoralized going into going back home down 0-2 because you had a 5-point lead with 3 minutes to go in the fourth in Boston, game one, and then you also had a 17-point lead in tonight's game. And guess what? They blew both of those, and Boston ended up winning. And it came down to the final few possessions, both games. And honestly, Kevin Durant got locked up. Kyrie, I thought Marcus Smart. Can we talk about Marcus Smart for a second? Wins Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And then you didn't you're like, okay, this guy's a dog. Like, this guy's deserved it. Like, he's been in the league for almost 10 years. I think 8 on the dot. And he's deserved it for quite a while. The very next day, he comes out. And I swear I have not seen such aggressive defense from Marcus Smart in my life on Kyrie Irving. He did not let Kyrie Irving even get a dribble in on some possessions. And that just goes to show you this team, excuse my language, I usually don't swear on the show, but I'm going to. The Celtics are locked the fuck in right now. And watch out because you go into Brooklyn and you even dare so split the series and go up 3-1 or 3-0. Brooklyn is screwed. I know they got KD and Kyrie on the other side, but they are screwed. I wasn't banking in on a Celtics loss tonight, but I certainly didn't expect the Celtics to go up 2-0 in the fashion that they went in. So all the head's got to be lifted up here high if you're the Celtics going to Brooklyn.
And real quick, just I said this earlier, but I gotta say it again. The sweetest part about this victory to me is just now. What they got to say now? What does the media have to say now? What is Stephen A. gonna say? What is Skip Bayless gonna say?
JJ Redick.
These guys I listened to these guys and they said, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, they won't do that again. They won't. They were finding any way to discredit the Celtics and credit the Brooklyn Nets. You have to credit what the Boston Celtics are doing right now. They are putting on what honestly, arguably is one of the best defensive performances we've seen by a team in a long, long time. They're holding a generational talent to 20% shooting. He didn't hit 0 of 10 in the second half?
Yeah, I mean, never done that.
We are locking them up and I'll keep saying it and until the series is over, and hopefully the Celtics hold on to this commanding 2-0 lead. But just listening to how these guys were refusing to credit the C's and credit Tatum and credit Brown, but they were so fast to credit Kyrie and Durant, who have done nothing together, have succeeded in no way, shape, or form. Great two talents, all-time talents when it's all said and done, but together, when their backs are against the wall and their backs are against the wall and adversity strikes, these two guys aren't going to answer. They're not. We've seen it. I've seen it at least in the past 3 years, and I'm kind of interested now. I would love to see if KD and Kyrie can come back and make this, hopefully I don't, but I'm interested. I'm interested to see how they're going to respond to this Celtics team who's just absolutely kind of manhandling them right now. Even though it doesn't show on the scoreboard, but, physically and emotionally, the Celtics own them right now.
Yeah, and I will say KD and Kyrie, they do have the ability to overcome adversity. We've seen them hit some of the biggest shots in NBA history. It's more of the fact that right now they're running into a buzzsaw with a lesser talented team. And the others around them had great games tonight, and that's a part of why this game was completely blown for the Nets. How many more opportunities are they going to receive this series where Bruce Brown, Goran Dragic, and I'm blanking on the third guy here, Bruce Brown, Goran Dragic, and Seth Curry, all of those guys scoring double figures and nearly inch to the 20-point mark. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 2 of those guys ended up with – so Bruce Brown had 23, Seth Curry had 16, and Goran Dragic off the bench had 18. How many more performances out of those guys like that are they going to see throughout the rest of the series? It's a question that, it probably doesn't have a great answer for the Brooklyn Nets. And the fact KD and Kyrie were just so bad tonight, I mean, that is just a nightmare for the Nets, because coming into this game, it looked like the worst case scenario for the Celtics. The role guys of the Nets are burning them early. They're going out and grabbing a big first quarter, second quarter lead, and you're just thinking to yourself, KD and Kyrie, they just perform very, very well in the fourth quarter, of course, as we saw with Kyrie in game one, and you don't want to be digging yourself out of a hole. And yet tonight, KD and Kyrie just never showed up. And I don't think that it was necessarily them sucking, but it was the Celtics defense constantly hounding them, and also the game plan as well. I touched on it. It didn't make any sense why Kyrie was not more involved down the stretch for them, especially with the way the Celtics were guarding Kevin Durant. But moving forward, Celtics have a tremendous opportunity in front of them. It's not going to be easy going on the road. Great that we took care of home court advantage. This is exactly what we're supposed to do at the end of the day, is take care of home court advantage and then go out and try to win on the road. That's going to be the next biggest obstacle of the Celtics. And, we've been defending KD and Kyrie well. And I know these guys on Sports Center and ESPN, Fox Sports, whatever they're on, they always say, KD and Kyrie, they won't have more games like this. But I guarantee they will not have more and more bad games. We're going to see a good game out of KD. We're going to see another good game out of Kyrie eventually. And hopefully moving forward, the Celtics can continue to weather that storm the way they weathered the bench tonight for the Nets and, of course, Kyrie in game one. We'll just have to see where those answers lie moving forward.
For sure, and we got Ian joining us live from the Garden. Let's see what the scene's like.
Let's
Ian,
go!
welcome in, Ian.
Let's go!
Celtics, big time win, up 2-0. What was the scene like at TD tonight?
Bro, this was the loudest place I think I've ever heard. I think my head was going to explode halfway through it. I swear to God.
Yeah,
I saw you on TV. You should have had a poster.
I finally made it.
That's dope.
Oh, my God. Bro, that's insane.
Hey, who popped off tonight? Who's the player spotlight tonight?
Grant! Bro, Grant was so clutch tonight. I swear to God, he was the best player on the floor.
I love it.
My
Grant,
God, bro.
Grant made winning plays. I got to ask, though, Ian, Celtics down 17, whatnot. Did the energy in that Garden ever leave the building? Or was there a time where kind of Brooklyn sucked it away, or was it constantly
Honestly,
going?
Yeah, it never went away. We were down by a lot, but literally no one was worried. It was honestly, I thought it would have been dead silent, but no, there was still people talking. There was still people saying F Kyrie and stuff like that. So, it never really stopped rocking. And bro, the fourth quarter, I swear to God, that was the loudest I've ever heard the Garden. And I've been here. I went to last year's playoff game and it was nothing. This year,
Right.
That was absolutely nuts, bro.
Yeah, well, Mark D'Amico, who's obviously a big head in the Celtics industry and media market, said that this is some of the loudest. He was saying it in game one, and he said it again about game two. These two games have been the loudest he's heard the TD Garden in his 14 years of covering the Celtics, and that's pretty crazy if you ask me.
In 2 of those years, Celtics went to the championship. So
It was
so the Garden's rocking.
Nuts, bro. Oh my God.
Well, the crowd is part of the equation. It's like if the team, you mentioned, Ian, the crowd never really went away. They were always buzzing. And it's like the crowd is part of the whole equation for the team too, because if you don't have a good crowd and you don't have that intensity down the stretch, the other team is not going to be as rattled. They're not going to be as intimidated. And just the crowd, Ian, just singularly, he was there tonight. He's part of this whole thing. Just ridiculous. The crowd is ridiculous right now.
Bro, I can't imagine what it heard like it was on TV. It must have been insane on TV.
We weren't at the game. It's noticeable on TV. It is noticeable.
It's very noticeable.
1,000%. And just years ago in 2018, it was very noticeable as well. But this series in particular, we're facing Kyrie, we're facing KD, two of the biggest, around the NBA, two of the biggest snakes, of course, with Kyrie and that whole situation. And this team is actually good. Right. This team, the Celtics team, is dominant. And not only are they dominant, they are a team that's been here for a long time all of a sudden. We've seen Tatum, Brown, Smart, and Horford for nearly half a decade now. We love these dudes, and that is why the crowd is turning up right now. And woo, we're back.
Bro, we don't even have
seriously back.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And COVID, man. And COVID.
Bro.
Dude, and do you know what's crazy to me? At least I think is there was a time, because, I've been going to a lot of games this year. There was a time in January where I sat there in the Garden and I looked around and I saw so many empty seats, and not so many, but, more than usual. And the intensity wasn't really there. It was still popping, right? Celtics fans are still diehards. It was still, it was still loud, and the energy was there, but there was something different. And Ian, I definitely think you could agree with me here. There was something different about games 1 and 2 that just, it was the players feed off of it. And I remember when Brown came back from behind in game 1 and swatted Durant, and he goes into the crowd. And I think it happened again tonight. He got an and one layup and he goes into the crowd and he starts flexing, and Tatum's in the back and they're flexing. And it's just kind of like,
they were hyping up the crowd. They were hyping
and it's like,
up
shit,
the crowd.
They're feeding off of this, right? This is exactly what you want out of it. That's what makes the Celtics so hard to beat, is when if their crowd in the TD Garden is energized and it's loud, you won't come into our arena and beat us, plain and simple.
Right.
We'll find a way to win the basketball game. And you saw that in that 2018 run, and we happened to run into LeBron James. And this year, this team, Jeff Green. Oh my God, Game 7, Jeff. This year, this team, this coach, these players, these fans, it just feels a little bit different. And,
Right.
I said before this playoff series started, and I don't want to overreact by any means. There's business still to be done. We're only up 2-0. We got 2 more games to win. And I'm gonna predict Brooklyn's gonna come back to their place and they're gonna be pissed off. However, there's something that feels a little bit different. And if we can manage to beat this team who manhandled us last year, who Kyrie Irving has trashed on this organization and these fans so much, and Kevin Durant has, his problems on social media, and Ben Simmons, who refuses to suit up and play. If we can beat these guys, right, these villains. I was talking to my dad after game 1, right? He was like, this is good. These are the villains that we need in sports, and that's the Brooklyn Nets. And if the Boston Celtics can beat these guys, they're going to feel invincible. And Justin, we talked about this in the podcast. This is the start of what could be a deep run. It's just the start. It is what probably. It's what 7% of 2 out of 16. What do you need to win? 16 total games, 2 out of 16.
What have I been saying this whole time? It's a part of the documentary. That's what it is.
The season is a documentary.
Something feels a little bit different now. Like, there's still a lot of work to do. We got to go in and we got to find a way to beat Kevin Durant at his place. That's tough. That is tough. That's not easy. And you'd assume maybe that the Celtics defense has been phenomenal. Hopefully it stays up, but you'd assume KD's going to start to hit a couple more of these shots sometime. But we got to take care of business in Brooklyn, plain and simple. And if we do that, we can beat anyone.
Honestly, there's one thing I want to say before I got to go. I'm shocked that Kevin Durant is not having as good a series as I thought. Like, the Celtics are playing defense on him.
Oh, God.
But even when he's wide open, he's missing shots. Like, I've never seen that before out of Kevin Durant. Like, it's absolutely insane, man.
He struggled in the first half. There were a couple of shots that hit the rim and didn't get the bounce. But really quick, going back to the crowd, I don't know if you guys saw. I watched it on NBC Sports Boston. But Marcus Smart lifted his hands up twice when the Celtics were on that big run. And he lifted it up twice, and the Garden rose to their feet. It's like all 20,000 fans were watching him. Rose to their feet and got loud. And I'm sorry, this isn't me being a green teamer. I genuinely don't know if there's a type of fan base like the TD Garden, the atmosphere. This is truly something special in front of our eyes. I've interviewed Mark D'Amico before, and he told me stories of back in the Ray Allen, KG, and Paul Pierce days, and the championship days, and the runs that they went on. And if he's coming out here and saying that these game 1 and 2 atmospheres is something special, Mark D'Amico has been through some crazy playoff runs throughout his journalism career. So that's something special. And hey, Grant Williams said in his post-game interview, I don't know if you guys heard it. He goes, "It's not that it's not that long for Brooklyn." He said, "I'm sure Celtics fans will show out there too. It's not that far from Massachusetts here. I'm sure some diehards will love to take the ride up, but this you got to go in here and split the series. Obviously, you can't let it back into this series. But you come out with even one game out of these two games." You come home and you have a chance to close out on the Garden Parquet in an elimination game in the TD Garden. Quite frankly, I'm confident. I'm not cocky. I think the Celtics would win that strictly from the crowd.
Yeah.
Bro, crowd is nuts. There's really no other atmosphere like the TD Garden during a Celtics playoff game. There's really no other atmosphere when it comes to that. Like, I don't think I've heard a louder stadium like during a playoff game than I did tonight. Like, holy cow, man.
Go home and take an Advil. Go home and take an Advil.
I gotta take a nap, man.
Oh, dude! After game one, my head was pounding. Oh my god! But Seamus, it sounded like you got something to say. Let me hear.
Yeah, we should be so appreciative that we're seeing this high level of basketball so early. Because imagine, like I said I think I said this after game one. We could have been in a series against the Bulls or the Raptors or a lesser team even from them and just beaten the brakes off of them, which it doesn't really seem like there's a series like this year. Maybe Miami, Atlanta, maybe that happens later on down the line. But we could have been in a first-round series that we go through quite easily, and that, some argue that could have been a better path for the Celtics. But right now, this is fun. This is fun. I mean, this series in the first two games, I shouldn't say ever, but I don't think I've been this interested in Celtics games in the last 2 years, maybe since the bubble. Because last year, we just kind of knew the inevitable. And then season, we had all that. Half of this season, we turned up to an elite level. And this is what we were waiting for. This high level of basketball usually comes later on down the line in the semifinals, in the conference finals. Yet right now, we're getting it right smack in the first round against the Brooklyn Nets. Both teams are just playing at an extremely high level. And this is undoubtedly, I know it's 2-0 Celtics right now, but this is undoubtedly the best series of the entire first round. And it's a legitimate semifinals, conference final series that we're watching right now. And, depending on what happens, of course, the Celtics could completely blow it. Yeah, break them up. They said break them up.
These are some of the coldest photos I've ever seen in my life. Ever.
They said break them up. What happens if Jaylen Brown is traded for like Domantas Sabonis at the deadline? What happens? Are we on this run right now? Are we defeating Brooklyn? I don't think so. All the talking heads, don't pay attention to them, folks. This team
trade
is
Smart. They
solid.
said they should trade Smart. We are not up 2-0. They said trade Horford. We're not up 2-0 with either of those guys.
I just want to say something right here. I myself did say trade Horford. I'm sorry on that. Okay, that's my fault.
Damn it,
I was
bro.
wrong. Playoff Al did come out.
Playoff Pritchard tonight.
Playoff Pritchard.
Yes, we didn't talk about Peyton Pritchard.
I love Peyton Pritchard. Rob, I remember you hated Peyton Pritchard.
The best 11 in Celtics history, God, Peyton Pritchard. Peyton Pritchard was just phenomenal. And the early in the fourth quarter, or throughout the fourth quarter, rather, that was exactly his game. We've been seeing that throughout the second half of the season where Ime Udoka, he's not afraid to throw out Peyton Pritchard out there as a spark plug scorer. Go get us some buckets, Pritchard. Go compete on defense. I know you're going to be a liability, but we have these other versatile guys out here that can shade you a little bit on that end and just compete your ass off and go hit shots. And that's been his role the second half of the season. And tonight was exactly his role in game two. And it was like the formation, the coming out party of Peyton Pritchard, where you're just asking yourself the whole season, is this sustainable in the playoffs? Can they play him in the fourth quarter? Can they, have him be this little spark plug scorer off the bench? And we just saw in the playoffs in game two, the answer is yes. He can do that. He can, like I said, if he can score 6, 8, 10 points in a game, that can swing a game, and a game can swing a playoff series. And we saw that tonight from Peyton Pritchard. it's reality right now with Peyton Pritchard. Is he a star? No, not by any means, not yet. But Peyton Pritchard was absolutely phenomenal in his role tonight and has been throughout the second half of the season. I'm so glad it's paid dividends up to this point, and hopefully it will moving forward.
Most definitely, especially after game one, we kind of all said, like, listen, we got to see more from the bench, right? A little bit more from the bench, a little bit, Grant, they had 7, they had 10, but we just needed a little bit more, and they gave us that little bit more tonight. Grant and Pritchard were great. White still kind of struggling offensively. He doesn't really know what to do. His defensive impact is still being felt, so I do want to give him some flowers. But, a little quote here from Steve Nash, fellas. Steve Nash on Kevin Durant's frustration. He says they're being physical. He's been uncomfortable. He hasn't been able to get into his rhythm. And I think that is so important here, is that the Celtics have recognized that Kevin Durant does not like physicality.
Right.
He doesn't. It's the truth. And really neither does Kyrie Irving. But they're being physical. Their defense is there. They're playing at a high pace. The bench is cooking. The Jays are answering in the fourth quarter. Mr. What's your thing, Justin? He's 25, Big Al.
Oh, yes, sir. He's 25. He's no 35 years old. Al, baby. What did you say? Yes. Team. Yes. I love it.
Yes.
What did rookie JT say back in the day? He
playoff
said,
Al, baby.
Playoff Al.
I love it. Hey. I also want to mention, though, really quick, not to cut you off, Rob, that in the pregame press conference, Abby Chin asked about Ben Simmons. He said, yes, he is ramping up on workouts, but he said, quote, it's news to me when Abby Chin told him that there's reports saying that a game 4 is his return. So, like, the coaching staff don't even know if he's coming back yet. All of a sudden, the media knows. It's inevitable. It's ridiculous. Rob, continue. I just wanted to throw that out there.
No. I love it. And it's just like I said, it's different. This team feels just a little bit more connected. And what did Horford say? He said, or Smart, he would say, but before the rainbow, it has to rain. And that feels like those struggles, those hard times, brought this team together a little bit tighter. And they've been through the ringer for sure over the past year. They were the 11 seed, the 10 seed. I don't want to throw any cliches out there, right? Plain and simple. But they're playing good basketball right now. However, as much fun as this is, they have to lock in, because with all due respect, Kyrie and KD are on the other side of the basketball.
Correct.
And as much as, right, we know how good they can be. Personally speaking, I think the Celtics defense is just a little bit better. But we know how bad things can get if you let them get comfortable. So keep making them uncomfortable. Keep forcing them into bad shots. I'm excited for Game 3, Saturday night, 7:30. Catch us back here. Celtics Postgame Live. If you're not already, subscribe to the channel. We would appreciate it. Go follow us on Instagram, all of our individuals, and our main page at Celtics Talk Weekly. We appreciate all your love. Guys, before we close out the show, what's the final word? C's up 2-0. Kyrie Irving going back home.
Game 3.
Disappointed.
Game 3 is a must-win for both these two teams. More so the Brooklyn Nets, but the Boston Celtics. Look, no team has ever come back from 0-3. I've said this even before. I've said this to customers who come into my site. I've said to them, look, if we go up 3-0, I highly doubt it, but if we go up 3-0, the Brooklyn Nets might be that team that could potentially win 4 straight games. They got Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant on the other side. It's very, very unlikely, but Game 3, I think, is a huge, huge game for both these two teams. And honestly, go out there and play your brand of basketball. You can't start slow like you started tonight. Remember, you're not home. You're not at home. You don't got that 6-man with you that night. So just go in Game 3 and keep your foot on the gas pedal and have fun out there. Keep playing the way you've been playing.
Yep.
You want to go ahead?
If I have to talk about this game tonight, it was probably the best Celtics game I've seen in the last 5 years, maybe.
5 days.
5 days, pretty much. Yeah, you're
Game
right.
one.
True. I don't know. When it comes to having to make like an end of the year list of like the best Celtics games, I don't know. These two might have to compete for each other. Anyway, like you said, Justin, it's insanely important the Celtics at least take one in Brooklyn. If they don't win Game 3, they have to win Game 4.
Right.
Right. It's super important the Celtics, they continue to ride this momentum because we've seen, even the start of this game, it didn't start out great, like you said. So we need them to keep going crazy, man. And honestly, I don't even know what to say. I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted, but honestly, I'm so happy, bro. I'm so happy we're seeing a Celtics team that's actually playing good basketball, and the fact that I don't know, man. It just seems different. It, like you said, it feels like a documentary is being written as we're going along here. So,
Yeah.
oh my god, man.
And I think the Celtics right now have a lot of big fuck you energy with them because you mentioned the whole Steve Nash quote about the Celtics being physical with the Nets. The Nets came out tonight and they tried to be physical with the Celtics. You know what the Celtics did? We don't give a shit. We're going to be more physical with you on the defensive end of the floor, and we're going to take it to the hole the entire game. We're going to continue to be aggressive. We're going to continue to drive it right down your throat, Brooklyn. We're going to give it to you every single possession. And that's some big fuck you energy from the Celtics, and they should be this confident right now. They've played amazing throughout the second half of the season, and this core, like I mentioned earlier in this program, this core has been together for nearly half a decade. Of course, we had that little break 2 years with Al Horford, but this core ultimately has been together for nearly 5 years now, 6 years now, and they should have that big fuck you energy, that big confidence moving forward that, hey, we're going into Brooklyn. We're not going to try to just, 1-1 in Brooklyn and come back 3-1. We want to end it in Brooklyn. I guarantee that is what they're thinking right now. And will it happen? We'll have to see. KD and Kyrie are two of the most resilient players in the NBA, but the Celtics, they can go into Brooklyn, they can impose their will, and ultimately they're only 2 wins away from closing out the Brooklyn Nets and closing the chapter on the Brooklyn Nets 2021-2022 season.
We're gonna blast this if we win this series. New York.
Justin, copyright.
Real quick. One more thing.
I'll sing.
One more thing, guys. One more thing. I got one more thing. Robert Williams is coming back in about 2 or 3.
Oh, too bad you're muted. You're muting on everything important. Everything important he just said. He got muted.
Right as he was saying.
Do you want me to sing?
Unbelievable. Oh, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's unfortunate. All I was saying is that, listen, we're up 2-0, and we got Rob Will coming back right around games 5 or 4 or 6. So, listen, if I'm the NBA, I run because those seeds are coming, and we will see you guys game 3 after the Celtics take on the Brooklyn Nets this Saturday at 7:30. We'll see you after the final buzzer